It's the day before an exam, and all through the night, not a student was sleeping. They're studying out of fright. Oh, come on, we've all been there. That's why I made this video. For those of us that need to learn how to take tests. Listen, we all need to learn how to play the game, and some of us already have some strategies to take these tests. Others needed to learn them. If you are one of those many people who struggle with test anxiety or just absolutely abhor taking tests, then these strategies might just be for you. Today we're going to be talking about why you should know how to study and how to take tests, just really briefly. Then we're going to test yourself. So there is a pop quiz, spoiler alert. So make sure you do have a piece of paper somewhere nearby. It can be just a little piece of scratch paper, sticky note, something like that. I don't know. Piece of gum wrapper. Who cares? Just have a piece of paper and something to write with. And then finally, we'll be going over the 10 different steps that effective test takers use when taking an exam. Dun, dun, dun. So why is it that you need to know how to study in the first place? So there was this study done about forgetting and learning, essentially. And they call it the forgetting curve, or by Ebbinghaus, the forgetting curve. And what they find is that what you learn pretty much goes away rather rapidly after learning it. So as you can see in this graph over here, when somebody first learns something, they have 100% retention. However, as the day goes on, you lose it. So according to this graph, you can see that after a full day goes on from learning something new, you lose 20% of it. In other words, you only retain 80% of that new subject that you just learned. Yikes. So you're learning something and boom, like that, 24 hours later, you've already lost 20% of it. Just gone, like it never existed. What the kind of sucks. However, if you notice in the graph, there's these dashy lines that go back up, and that's if you reviewed it. So within 24 hours, you learn something new. Before you go to bed that night, you review it, go to sleep. Hey, you actually start back up at the 100% again. Until the next day. If you don't review it and you just kind of forget about it, you can see that you start this forgetting curve pattern all over again. And you have to review again in order to remember what it is that you learned before. So if you keep reviewing, you can see this graph kind of tapers off how quickly you forget. So as you go along in days along that x-axis all the way to day 7, and if you keep reviewing it along the way, you'll note that the curve going down doesn't go down quite as drastically. It kind of flattens over time instead of going straight down. That's the benefit of reviewing as you go. So if you are studying, the correct way to study is actually not the night before the exam. That's just gonna make your brain explode. But if you review briefly, shortly, in an unstressful kind of way, after you learn something as you go, my suggestion is, before you go to sleep, flip through your notes just really nonchalantly. That's the best way to do it, actually, because then you're reviewing it and you're not having to remember it all at once the night before an exam. Anybody else out there ever sit in a room and stare at a test and the whole room starts spinning and you feel like you're gonna hurl and you can't focus, and there's that little person in the back of your head going, "You know nothing, you know nothing, you're going to fail and disappoint all of your family." Why is it that you need to know how to test? So besides the obvious of the fact that we've all had to take a test in our lives at one point or another, there's also the point that in order to play a game, you need to know the rules of the game. Really, that's all it comes down to, right? What are the rules to this game? So if there's anybody else out there in the world that feels like I do when it comes to testing, you know that test anxiety is really real, and it doesn't really test your knowledge when you get into that psycho whirlwind mindset. There's no way that the test that you've studied weeks for is going to reflect the true knowledge that you actually have. And that's where test-taking skills or strategies can come in really handy, because you might have it all up there in your noggin, but you're staring at that test and the test is one angry little devil staring back at you saying, "You know nothing." So that brings me to this test wiseness test. This is your pop quiz. So at this point, this would be great when you have your little scratch paper or your piece of gum wrapper, whatever it is you've got. Take out a piece of paper and a writing utensil. Now, please, no cheating. Don't try and skip through the video. Don't fast forward to see what I'm going to say. This only works if you participate as directed. So it's only going to take a few minutes. Please just do it. It will benefit you so greatly. It benefited myself as well immensely, and is actually one of the things that really helped me pass my real estate exam, just FYI. So there's things in here that'll really help you, and they only work if you really actually go with it and try with it. So don't try and cheat yourself here. Be serious. This is a serious quiz, serious test. No cheating. Don't look at your phone. Phone's away. Test environment. Okay, question number 1. The Augustine National Party has its headquarters in, so on your little paper, write 1, and then answer either A, B, C, or D. All right, moving on. Question 2. Herman Klaverman is best known for A, B, C, or D. Moving on. Question number 3. The Davis Act of the 20th century, A, B, C, or D? And moving on to question number 4. Harold Stone's book, The Last Friendship, is an example of an A, B, C, or D. And moving on. Last question, question number 5. The population of Franktown is more than A, B, C, or D. That was the completion of the quiz. Put your pencil down. If you need to go back and look at those questions again, look at the answers again, go ahead and do that. That's fine. Don't mind screw it to death though. I want you to have that piece of paper out. You've got your answers 1 through 5. You got A, B, C, D written on each spot. Now here's the catch. Each of those questions and items were completely fictitious. There was absolutely nothing about those that was real. Completely made up. So there couldn't even be a real answer because they're made up. They don't exist. However, there are clues to what the implied correct answer would be in these scenarios. So let's go through each one of them and explain how good test-taking skills would get you 100% on that completely fictitious quiz. So first and foremost, the Augustine National Party has its headquarters in. The answer is B, because what we see is a similar term of grammatical structure and words, the St. Augustine, Florida. So the St. Augustine National Party would likely have its headquarters in St. Augustine, Florida. So the takeaway from this question, this fictitious quiz question, is that when you're looking through A, B, C, D option choices, you want to look for words that are similar to what's in the question itself. In other words, similar words or phrases within the answer options point to the correct answer when you compare the answers to the question itself. Answer number 2. Herman Klaverman is best known for developing all musical scales used in the Western world. B. Composing every single sonata during the Romantic era. C. Translating all Russian classics into English. Or D. Inventing the safety pin. Okay, so the takeaway from this one is that the answer is in fact D, inventing the safety pin. And the reason for that is because when you have things that are extremes, encompassing all, every. Those are less likely to be the case. Most answers that have all, every in them are too broad. They have too much included in that answer. So typically when you see all, everys in your answer choices, those are usually not the one that's right. Answer 3. The Davis Act of the 20th century. A. Provided more money for schools. That would be great. B. Struck down an earlier law. C. Prohibited the manufacture, sale, transportation, or use of several specific drugs that were being used for illegal purposes. D. Gave raises to government employees. This is a scenario of one of these things is not like the other. So the answer would be C. The Davis Act of the 20th century prohibited the manufacture, sale, transportation, or use. Notice how detailed that answer is. Typically the one that's longer, more detailed, and doesn't look like the other ones is the correct answer. That was one of the dead giveaways for the real estate exam, by the way. This same technique goes for if there's a lot of really long answers and then one shorter answer. So always keep in mind the one of these things is not like the other, like it doesn't look the same as the other ones in terms of length or explanation or in depth of the explanation itself. That's usually the right answer. Answer number 4. Harold Stone's book, The Last Friendship, is an example of an A. Political satire. B. Autobiography. C. Science fiction. D. Biography. Test wiseness skills here is because the test maker made a grammatical error in giving you a dead giveaway that an has to be followed by another vowel. Autobiography. So the answer here would be autobiography because an is always going to be in front of something that starts with a vowel. Now, a lot of tests have a and then in parentheses the n, the a and, so that they can try and avoid that mistake in test making. So another thing that people often forget to do is plurals. So make sure that when you're reading a question, if it's implying plurals or singulars, that can also be a dead giveaway for what your correct answer choice would be. Answer number 5. The population of Franktown is more than, well, just by the fact that it says more than, the only correct answer is, well, could be all of them, right? Could be. But there's one that has to be. There's one that has to be. And that is 50,000. Because that's the least amount in your answer choice. And we know that Franktown has to be more than that. Because that's the smallest amount that they're even giving you in your answer choice. Okay, so how'd you do? Did you pass? Do you have the test wiseness already in there? If not, that's okay. When I first took it, I completely failed this test. I'm definitely that person that has Tito, the anxiety mosquito, like flying around my head the entire time I'm taking a test. So until I actually did this myself, I wasn't a very good test taker, and I didn't learn this until my last year of college. So what are the 10 things you should do when you walk into that test room on test day and the test is put in front of your face and your brain starts to go, here's the 10 things that will hopefully keep you on track. Step 1, jot down any mnemonic or reminders that you had going through your head if there's any free space on the exam whatsoever or scratch paper immediately when you get your test. First thing, jot down those mnemonics. So PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or if you were going to do like, I don't know, a cranial nerve exam, to taste and feel, very green vegetables, yum, or something like that. I don't remember back in my college days. You've got all these different mnemonics and reminders going through your head, whatever cute little songs you have or little acronyms, jot those down first thing. Step 2. Skim the entire test before answering anything. Now, this is a little bit more difficult in the technology era because a lot of our tests are given online as opposed to hard copies. But if you are given a hard copy of a test, make sure you skim through the whole thing before you answer anything. Sometimes there's clues to previous questions at the end of the exam. So you want to look through and see, okay, what are the harder things? What should I focus on first, last? It's kind of like figuring out your battle plan, and that's worth that time in the very beginning of the exam to skim the entire thing before taking it. Now, if it's an electronic one, don't do that because it'll take you forever to hit next, 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 next to go all the way through. Number 3, answer any questions you know immediately. So if you see a question that happens to be number 3 and you haven't looked at 1 or 2 yet, who cares? If you know the answer to number 3, answer number 3 first. Also keep in mind what I said before is that there might be cues and reminders for answers to previous questions later on in the exam. So as long as you're going through and you're answering questions that you know first, you can always go back later and be like, oh yeah, because they worded it this way for question number 10, I now have the answer for question number 2. Number 4, make note of item weights or question point values. This is really important in college. In high school, there are some teachers that will also attribute point values to different things as well. So make sure you go through and you say, okay, well, question number 5 is worth 10 points. Question number 1 is worth 2 points. Spend more time on question 5 because that's what's going to get you the more points. Don't waste too much of your time on the lower point items. Go for the big kahuna points. You're playing the game, remember? You want to win the game. And the way to play the game is to get all the points that you can. So go for the ones that have more item weight. Number 5. If possible, mark little X's or question marks onto things that you think you need to come back to. So remember I said you want to immediately answer the stuff that you know first. But what do you do with all the stuff in between where you're not so sure? That's where you put a question mark or an X or something to tell yourself, go back and look at that afterwards. Don't worry about it right now. It doesn't mean you don't know it. It means you're not willing to waste the brain energy right that second to answer the question. You would rather get the low-hanging fruit of questions you know the answer to, i.e. playing the point game, getting your points racked up, and then go back and exert the mental energy it requires to answer the questions with X's or question marks next to them. Number 6, multiple choice tests, a fan favorite of many teachers out there. Eliminate response choices that you know are incorrect. This is pretty much standard. If you don't do this already, please do this. Teachers are trained to put in distractor items. That is what they're actually called. So there's distractor answers. Make sure you go through your multiple choice options and literally cross out any of the options you know have to be incorrect. Now keep in mind, you can use that test wiseness we just learned. If any of those options are all, every, or if the grammatical doesn't match, if there's an or a singular plural from the question that wouldn't match with the answer, cross those off. They can't be the answer. With true-false questions, what you want to do is underline or make specific note of parts of the question itself that would make the item false. So try and play scenarios in your head. What would make that question false? The sky is blue. What would make that question false? Maybe you're in Arizona and it's a sunset. It's the evening. The sky isn't blue at that point. It's a gorgeous array of red, orange, yellow, purple sometimes, and pink. So write down anything that you think would make that question false. Number 8, use poor test creation to your advantage. This is where you're looking for those grammatical parallels. You're looking for misspelled words. You're looking for any of the ands, plural, singulars. You're looking for anything that's a giveaway as to what the answer could be. You'd be surprised at how many times poor test creation will help you get the right answer. A lot of the times, the one of these things is not like the other is a great example of poor test creation. If a teacher gives you 4 choices and the one is shorter, the other 3 are longer, the shorter one's probably the right answer. Or if all 3 are short and one's long, the longer one's probably the right answer. Use this to your advantage. Take advantage of it. Number 9, review the test before you turn it in, before you submit it. You're stressed out, and rightfully so. There's a lot hinging on this exam, whatever exam it might be. It might be one of the 112 you had to take from pre-kindergarten to 12th grade, not even including college or trade school. But the thing here is that as you're reviewing, you are checking to make sure you answered everything. So you don't want to turn in something that you just missed on accident, where you didn't even have a chance to answer it. You do not, and I repeat, do not want to change your first answer unless you completely misunderstood or misread the question. Most of the time, and this is proven from myself as well, because I thought, what is this test wiseness thing? No, whatever, psychology bullcrap, nobody, but really, it works, because the times I have gone back and second guessed myself and changed my first answer, I end up getting it wrong, and I would have got it right. And this happened for my students time and time again as well when I taught high school. I could literally see that they had erased the bubble on the correct answer and chosen something different. Don't change your first answer. Your first answer, that gut feeling, is most likely the correct answer, unless, again, you completely misunderstood or misread the question from the get-go. And step 10, sit next to the smart kid. I'm just kidding. Don't sit next to the smart. Of course you want to sit next to the smart kid, because you can glean information from them during the class, just not during the test. No, but in all seriousness here, step 10 is more or less my personal input on this from a person who has taken many a test in their day. And that would just be to breathe. Just breathe. Remember that even if you were to completely fail this test, it doesn't lessen your worth as a human being or a person by even a grain of salt. The score you get on this test has nothing to do with who you are as a person, or how good you are, or how smart you are. Take a deep breath. You're going to be okay. Even if you don't pass it, you did your best, and it's going to be okay. Go out there and rock that test. I know you can do it.